Good morning, everyone. We've got a lot of material to cover and not much time to do it. I'm going to keep this lecture under 15 minutes. This lecture is actually probably about a half hour long if I were to wait for you to do all the writing that you're going to need to do. So I need you to put your finger on that pause button and pause it whenever you need to in order to get down all the notes because I'm going to move way too fast for you to keep up with me in real time. All right, so we're going to start off today by looking at our title slide, which has our big questions and our section vocabulary. If you would, please write that material, all of it, into your notes using your Cornell note style, and I'll pick you up after the pause. Pause right there. Picking up from the pause. This is a map that should look very familiar from our last class. It has the Roman Empire as it is as it existed in the east. So this is what I would call the Byzantine Empire. Um, this is the Christian area of this new Rome that develops. But where I want to draw your attention to today is this area in the west, which has all these little kingdoms, and you can imagine them, butting up against each other and doing some fighting and stuff. I'm drawing your attention to the Saxons up here in the north, in the modern-day area of Poland, and also the Angles. This is East Anglia. There's an area here called Kent. Notice Kent. That's important. We're going to talk about Kent a little bit later. But that's from about 400 AD. Now we're going to move to 500 AD. We're going to go 100 years into the future, and I want you to see that things have changed. The Roman Empire has shrunk a little bit. Notice they've lost all this material, all this territory on the north coast of Africa to the Vandals. Notice that one group called the Franks, which wasn't on the last map, now exists. The Saxons have a bigger territory, and then we get an area called the Angles and Saxons, and they dominate this whole eastern half of the modern island of Britain. And then we have the Ostrogoths in control of this whole area, right? So a lot of these Ostrogoths, by the way, were Christians, all right? They were Christianizing very, very quickly. In fact, I would go as far as saying that the Ostrogoths were Christians. We're going to keep on moving. The new kingdoms in Europe, remember we were looking at the Angles and Saxons in the northern parts of Europe. They were among Germanic people that kind of moved around the area, and the Angles migrated, moved into England, and eventually we get something that's considered Anglo-Saxon England. The Angles and the Saxon tribes sometimes fought with each other, sometimes cooperated. In the late 500s, there is a group of monks that moves into the area to convert the local Anglo-Saxon group to Christianity, and they are led by a guy whose name is Augustine. So I want you to draw your attention up here to the top right corner to Augustine. I did put a picture of Alfred the Great here, and we're going to come back and talk about Alfred the Great. He's going to be the first truly Christian king of Europe. The first truly Christian king of England. So that's why I have his picture there. All right, but I'm going to cover their picture up with my picture because I'm so much better looking, and Christianity slowly spreads. This guy, Augustine, that I'm covering up, he moves into the area of Kent. So when we look back at those pictures of, or those maps of Europe, I want you to remember that Kent, that place in the southeastern part of England, that was the first Christianized area. Moving on, we have the Franks. They're the ones in green, so you might remember them from our map there. They're the ones in green here. The Franks, they're another Germanic kingdom, and they established themselves in the northern areas of Gaul, which is France, right? So they're led by a guy whose name is Clovis. Clovis defeats a lot of his neighbors to build this really big, powerful kingdom. But the most important thing that I want you to remember about Clovis is that he was the first Frankish king that converted to Christianity. And that's important, right? It means that an ideology far to the south is starting to have influence on these people. And the more and more kings that become Christian, and the ones that tend to go along with the teachings of this institution in the South, it means that these tribes, these kingdoms, are going to be kind of held together by this ideology. They don't necessarily get along. They might beat each other up. They might take over each other, but they have something in common, and that would be their religion. All right. I've got this one slide right here. It's going to take up too much time for us to talk about the whole thing. So I would like for you to pause for a moment and read it. All right. Just to reiterate, the idea of where guilt is to determine guilt. Not guilt as in payment, but guilt as in like, are you guilty? So maybe there's a crossover there. I think that's kind of interesting. It means payment or tribute based on something you've done wrong, all right? And so where guilt is the idea of paying for a man, paying maybe for killing a person or maiming somebody in order to make things right. Now, just my little side note, because you know I love all these little historical side notes. Check this out. And now we know the reason for the term werewolf, right? What is a werewolf? He's a man wolf. You're welcome. All right, moving on very quickly. I've got this interesting map here that shows the spread of Christianity in Europe. The way you're supposed to read it is you notice the areas in orange first, the dark orange areas. Those are the areas that were Christianized early on, around a little after 300. And then about 300 years after that, you look at all the area that's in green and you notice how much Christianity has spread. Notice that the Danube River and the Rhine River seem to be the boundaries, the natural boundaries that separate these pagan Germanic kingdoms from Christian Europe. Also notice that our area that we live in right now in Friuli became Christianized very early on. All right, so Christian European society. I'm not going to read this all to you, but I would like for you to write it into your notes, especially concentrate on the stuff that I've highlighted in yellow. All right. Pause. And we'll pick up there. I want you to notice that we've got some of these animals off to the side here. A lot of people at this time were illiterate, and so teaching people about Christianity was something that had to be done in a very visual sort of way. This picture down here actually comes from a church very close to us, down in Aquileia. It's about an hour away, and it shows a tortoise and a rooster. And the tortoise represents denial and darkness and deceit. And so I guess that tortoise would represent maybe the devil. And then the rooster represents Christianity. In some cases represents Jesus. So we have Christianity and the devil, or Jesus and the devil. We see birds used to represent Jesus a lot. And we also, and I don't have it in these pictures here, but we also see the fish as an early symbol of Christianity. It would be good for you to look up why that was. It might just help it make more sense, make it stick in your memory a little bit better. We're going to move on to our next slide now. All right, I've got a series of maps right here, and this kind of takes us from where we started in this lecture all the way up to where we want to end, all right? So I've got a series of maps here. I'm just going to move them out of the way. This takes us all the way back to the year 358 AD, which is considered by some historians to be the end of the Roman Empire. And what I want to draw your attention to is this little purple blob up here at the top. Now, as I flip through these maps, I want you to recognize that the purple blob is sort of the origins or the nucleus of what's going to become the Frankish kingdom. If you see a lighter color or a different color blue, those are areas that are under Frankish control or they are influenced by the Franks. Green areas are going to be other kingdoms that are also Christian but are not Frankish. All right, so 358, moving into 482. Notice that the Romans are gone now. They would actually be down here in this area. We got the Byzantine Empire still, but we're kind of forgetting them on this map. So we still have the Frankish Kingdom and areas that they've been messing around with. Here's 511. We can see that the Frankish group and other Frankish allied kingdoms are growing in this area. Moving on to 537, this is amazing here, okay, because we have the Frankish kingdom growing very, very quickly. The darker blue areas and these areas here, those are allies of the Franks, and this area here and this light blue, light here and here, those are areas that they're in conflict with or have marched on. Maybe they've done battle in those areas, but they haven't conquered them. All right, here we've got our green areas. These are other Christian kingdoms, and the Franks stretch all the way from the north coast all the way down to the Mediterranean. And then when we go to our next map, you're going to see that they control all that area. Boom. They are no longer their own kingdoms. They're no longer green. They're actually under the control of the Franks. So this is the Frankish kingdom when Charlemagne takes over. And this is the Frankish kingdom towards the end of Charlemagne's rule. So we have his kingdom. These other blue areas are kingdoms that have allied themselves with Charlemagne. They pay homage to him. And then these lighter blue areas are the places where Charlemagne has ventured off into to conquer them. Hasn't necessarily conquered them, but every year, guys, Charlemagne loved to go off and fight with his neighbors. That was one of his favorite things to do. So every single summer, he was traveling somewhere to beat up somebody, and he was really good at doing it, as you can tell. All right, we're moving on from there, and I'm not going to insult your intelligence. I want you to copy down all this material. So the title of this is Building the Frankish Empire, and you can take your Tarzan notes if you want. Just copy down the most important stuff. And pause right there, and now I'm unpausing. Moving on to our next slide. Charles was this guy right here, Charles. He was, his full name was Charles Martel. He was Charlemagne's grandfather, and he was a very powerful knight. He actually was not a king, and he decided to fight against various people for his king, and his king recognized how powerful he was, and basically gave Charles Martel more and more power to the point where the dynasty that existed before Charles flips, and when he dies, his son Pippin becomes the next king of the Franks. Right, so the Carolingian dynasty that you see down here actually gets its name from Charles. The Latin word for Charles is Carol. So the Carolingian dynasty gets its name from Charles Martel, and we have the grandfather, the son, and eventually we have the grandson, which is Charlemagne. Okay, moving on. So I want you to remember that the correct order is right down here. Charles is Pippin III, I believe. You can check me on that. I think I'm right. Moving on. Military power. So in essence, you can pause this and you can write down the notes. I've highlighted the material that's most important here for you, but I just want you to see that we have this character. His name is Pope Leo III, and he comes under attack by a group of people called the Lombards, and he asks for help. And like any smart person, he asks for the biggest, baddest dude in the area to come to his help, and that happened to be Charlemagne. So Charlemagne came down and helped out Leo twice. The second time he helps him out, Pope Leo III just really racks his brain. What can he do to honor Charlemagne? I mean, Charlemagne really helped him out. And I mean, what do you give somebody who's got everything? Well, Pope Leo III did something pretty interesting. He gave Charlemagne a title, and the title is the Emperor of the Roman people, or the Holy Roman Empire. And that's a title that's going to stick for like 1,000 years. And that's the end.